it takes land management, water, like irrigation systems, and, it takes understanding plant life. Like you need real agronomists to come in, but it takes community management and it takes a
Yeah.
community of people coming together. So it's never going to be a top-down situation.
Welcome to Carbon Conversations, a podcast by Biochar Life, where we explore the cutting edge of environmental solutions. From biochar to smart agriculture to the climate tech revolution, we sit down with experts and business leaders at the forefront of change. This is your host, Matt Rickard. Hey, Erin, how you doing? Nice to see you again.
Good. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. We for the audience, we've done a podcast before, but it wasn't on here. It was with my last business with Task, which was in a slightly parallel space, but we talked all about blockchain and blockchain related to the environment, which we will do a little bit, but some other stuff today. But it's been a couple of years. I mean, maybe a good starting point is, what's been happening the last couple of years? I know last time you were working in the kind of blockchain space, very much so, but there's been a fair bit that you've been up to since then. Maybe as a little introduction for audience and a bit of an update for me, I suppose, in terms of where you're at.
Yeah, so since we last spoke, I went to COP27 and COP28. I have spent the past year doing work around soil regeneration and wastewater treatment, which is definitely a part of the bigger picture for carbon. And I still use blockchain in my projects and AI, but I like this format better because it doesn't really make sense business-wise to just be about blockchain. What makes better sense is to work with established systems and companies that want to make the leap into blockchain and AI. So it's just a reconfiguration, I'd say. For sure. And over the past year, I've been doing a lot of research and project building around the reversal of desertification and soil regeneration because the statistics are dire. We have about 60 years of healthy soil remaining, based off of a extensive report from the UN that came out about 4 years ago. So I'm doing my best with the resources I have to be a part of the solution.
Cool. Well, we're going to get into a little bit of that. I've read that report, so I know what you're talking about. And I know we'll touch on some of that. Maybe backtracking a bit, just to share, a little bit of your journey. It's been an interesting journey, from living with a farming community in Nepal to becoming, kind of an advisor in this space around carbon. And, how have those experiences going back kind of shaped where you are today and the work you do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's been a 20-year journey of how to figure out how to bridge my resources to farming communities because of this one farming community I lived with in the Himalayas, back about 20 years ago. And at the time, I didn't fully understand the bigger picture of smallholder farmers, but smallholder farmers are estimated to be about 500 million to 1 billion. And they're holding the keys to reversing climate change in a big way and food security.
Yeah, they are. I mean, smallholder farmers, I was just writing a blog last week. Obviously, I know these stats kind of offhand now because of the work we do, but 500 million maybe, but I think more just their relationship to food production globally, which is like 30+%, is massive, which most people would just have no idea of, right? In terms of their impact in terms of food production, food security, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
COP events, you talked about COP. I've never been to COP. It's a huge event, and it's, these events have their place. It'd be great to hear from you just to share a bit about COP28, the last COP event, which was 7 months ago now, maybe 7, 8 months. Obviously, we're over halfway through the year. Yeah, what were your key takeaways from the last COP event? What do you hope to see? With future events, and are you going to the next events? I think you've been a pretty regular visitor, right, to the COP events. But yeah, what were the key takeaways that you saw? The good, the bad, the great, and what do you hope to see from kind of future events and the impact that can have?
Well, I like COP because it's a more accessible event to attend compared to the World Economic Forum, and I've been to that as well. So I feel like there's a bit more of diversity. There's definitely way more representation from the Global South. I went to COP in Egypt. It was about 70,000 people in attendance. And then I went to COP in Dubai, which about doubled that. So about 140,000 people attended. COP is great for meeting amazing entrepreneurs with game-changing ideas. There's a lot of community around it. Of course, like the main actions of COP, getting these countries to do what they say they're going to do, that's a whole other story. But, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I've made incredible connections at COP that have changed my life and my business. So I'll continue to attend, but the real work happens with or without COP. So I would say what I didn't like about COP28 is that it's obvious that the carbon industry is growing rapidly. And I talked about this with a real carbon expert not too long ago, but it's kind of like the days of crypto where it's growing so fast, there's not enough regulation at all, and people just show up and they're like, oh, hey, I'm an expert, and it doesn't mean they know anything. And you're getting a lot of that, and it's like people who see this growing industry and it's exciting and it's like job opportunities, but it's also like a dangerous industry because just like with NGOs, it's like people have good intentions, and just because they have good intentions doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And I would say, like, I've looked at a lot of investment opportunities in carbon, and most of them I wouldn't touch at all. And a lot of them, I don't see that they're easy to scale. So there's a lack of transparency as far as, still to this day, as far as like, are the funds really going to the field where people need it the most? And I hear about problems on a regular basis with this. So that's how it's dangerous. Like, we don't have time, and we need real action at scale now. So, and it's also like, I just felt like COP28 was a bit too Hollywood for me. It was like, it was almost like a bunch of red carpet events without a red carpet. And like, carbon's getting more exposure in mainstream media, which is good and bad. And I've seen it's sometimes a bit of a popularity contest, and I don't have time for that. Like, I'm just trying to do the real work along with my collective. But yeah, listen, there are a lot of people doing some amazing work as well. So it's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, the comparison to the crypto space, because I've been to some of those events. And the crypto space events are quite strange, to be honest. And actually, I remember I went to, I forget which one it was, but it was in LA a couple of years ago. But it was, I compared it to a kind of Hollywood style event. I haven't seen that so much in the environmental space, but I do know what you mean. And there's this kind of, and it's because there's so much happening so fast and needs to, but there's this kind of balance, right, between you need things to happen fast, but you need them to happen in the right way. When they need to happen in the right way, then there's things like policy and regulation that needs to happen. That slows down. There's this kind of, and not making up excuses here, but there is this kind of annoying balance between things need to happen fast, but things need to happen in the right way. And to your point there, you said you'd seen a lot of, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you've seen a lot of technology in the space that it just won't work, right? I did a podcast with someone from a climate tech VC, or he was an advisor on one of those organizations. I know you're in that space as well. And he had the same kind of gripe that there's just all this excitement. So therefore you've got all of these kind of use cases of which maybe, 1, 2, 3% might actually be decent solutions that'll have an impact. There's no question in here. I'm just kind of making a point, but I don't know what the answer is really, because you kind of need all this activity in a way, and out of that, hopefully you find the real solutions, but we have limited time to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big part of the reason why I'm planning to do more public awareness about how to assess investments in the sustainability space.
Yeah, I think that's important.
And I'll probably be launching a podcast pretty soon, and it's going to take a group of people, but it's really important with due diligence to know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, I think there's more of that needed in terms of being able to understand from an investor's point of view, because there's just so much happening. So, shifting tone a little bit, you talked about soil. I know you're passionate about it for good reason. And yeah, I've read that UN report, in terms of, the limited time we have with the destruction of topsoil. And, well, actually, before we talk about the solutions, talk to us a little bit about the Sahara project. I hadn't heard about that before you shared the deck with me. It's really interesting. And I feel like I should have heard about it, and maybe there's not. I don't know how much media.
Oh, it's been quiet.
Okay, all right.
No, well, it's been quiet.
For the audience, yeah, talk us through the Sahara project, the problem it solves, the results it had, and related to soil, and we can dig in. Excuse the pun. We can dig into that a little bit more.
Well, yeah. So it's in early phases, and I'm folding it into a bigger fund that's going to address food security, climate action, water, and disruptive energy. Regardless of the name, what it is that we now have the expertise and the case studies that have already proven that we can reverse the desert. About 2/3 of the world is now in a state of desertification. And if we don't do what we need to right now at scale, the desert will take over the whole planet. Like we only have so much time. And, with that UN report, we've got about 60 years remaining. In 100 years, we don't change, most of the world will be desert here. So, I have advisors who have been working on this problem at scale. John D. Liu, who is a part of the case study out of China, which regenerated desert back to farmland to the size of Belgium. They saw their work really take hold after 10 years, but of course they start to see results within the first couple of years, and people can start farming again after several years. And now, of course, that was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
But now there's more of a knowledge base and experience, so they can actually do it faster. There are more technologies that have been developed. So, reversal of desertification means a bunch of things. It means reducing ambient temperatures. It means farmland, water, bringing commerce back to society. That society of millions in China was in a mass state of ongoing starvation and famine. And it's a thriving farming population now, and people have been able to go back to school and work. So yeah, we still need water and food and energy.
Are you able? Are you able to share some of the processes of how that's done? I mean, it sounds like without going into a deep tech dive, but just what are some of the processes in terms of regenerating that soil in those situations where it's desert, which is a massive turnaround, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, with the extreme desert, sometimes it can take the rotation of livestock, where the weight of the livestock and the rotation is helping to puncture holes in the earth. and to capture carbon and water instead of like the water just running off the top.
Yep.
So the animals are great at doing that. And then, for the China use case, they didn't use livestock because goats were part of the problem. So, it takes land management, water, like irrigation systems, and, it takes understanding plant life. Like you need real agronomists to come in, but it takes community management and it takes a community of people coming together. So it's never going to be a top-down situation where someone throws money at a country to fix these issues. It's going to take that level of money, but it has to come from the ground up. And that's why, like the Savory Institute, for example, that has regenerated about just under 40 million hectares of desertified land around the world on 5 continents now. They set up community hubs where they do these use cases. And it's in order to train them, to help them which plant life, when to rotate livestock, things like this. So outside of like science and natural know-how that we've had since the beginning of agriculture, it's going to take people coming together and loving their neighbors.
Let's talk about blockchain a little bit as well. I know you're still doing stuff in blockchain. You talked about transparency. Maybe you can explain the concept of nature assets on chain. What does it mean? Honestly, it's kind of like a bit of a buzzword. It's to some people, right? I mean, a lot of people don't know what that even means when you start talking on chain. But talk to us a little bit about nature assets on chain, what that means, and its potential, beyond soil carbon. How can blockchain still transform? I know, you and I have talked about blockchain a number of years ago. Obviously, I understand that space. I always have this thing that I say that when you have to mention the word blockchain when you're talking about something, that's the problem within itself. It should just be doing its job within the tech stack. But talk to us a little bit about blockchain on chain, nature assets on chain, what it means, where it's a good thing.
Yeah, so blockchain, again, is just an immutable database where you can have multi-signatory validation. So, any piece of data on blockchain has to be verified by every node on the blockchain. So, like, we're probably at thousands of nodes now around the world, maybe hundreds of thousands. I don't know the number, but it just means that there's open, transparent validation. So blockchain is just that. And if you have like water credits on chain, it means that you're taking the data, however you're measuring it. It could be through, manually taken samples. You can use AI to measure now. It could be a bunch of ways, but then you're just taking that information and locking it in the blockchain. And you can tokenize the information if you want, or just connect it to an NFT. But that's, way before we even look at monetizing it. So, people are working on biochar on blockchain. I know of people working on solar credits on chain.
Do you know Toucan? You talk blockchain. Actually, I'm speaking to the guys from Toucan. I don't know if you know Toucan.earth, but they're doing they're doing biochar on blockchain. That seems to be, from what I understand, a pretty successful use case. And as I see it there, it seems to be opening up financing options for smaller organizations that want to invest in biochar projects, which is obviously good. So what about the DeFi space in terms of DeFi markets? In Kenya, Uganda. In fact, before I throw that out there, maybe you can give us a 2-minute what is DeFi, because some people will be like, what are you talking about when I talk DeFi? But how do you see that, finance kind of adding to or supporting sustainable agriculture in some of the developing regions?
Well, I was just looking at my old DeFi fund that I designed for Kenya a while back. It never fully launched. I believe someone's still kind of working on a pilot that we created, but pretty much it's taking the middlemen out of finance. And like in Kenya, they have something called a chama, which is a women's circle, a women's saving circle. And
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
every weekend, they gather under a tree with a wooden box that has keys. There are at least 3 keys, and they go and unlock the box manually and have like gossip circle, put money in, take money out, give loans, and they don't need a banker to do that. So that's the original DeFi in my opinion. So DeFi is just that concept, but put it on technology. And the blockchain technology is perfect for these groups of women. And there's an estimated like about $2 billion worth of money sitting in Kenya in paper with about 300,000 women's groups.
yeah.
And that's just in Kenya.
Yeah, we have. I'm smiling because our communities are doing this, exactly what you just said. And we were looking at, there's this balance between, like, it works the way it works right now, right? So it's like what you don't want to do is introduce technology and make it not work. And they have a really good system in terms of how they do it. Table banking is another one. It's similar to what you just said, I think. But yeah, it's how you use technology to allow that to scale much further and faster and more effectively, right? Beyond just a few people in the community. But yeah, it's interesting. When I was researching it, it's staggering the amount of funds that are managed in that way within Kenya.
Yeah, in Kenya alone. And that's, those savings groups are all throughout Africa. I've heard they're in South America. I've heard there's some in India. But what's great about it is that if they want to put their paper money onto technology and hold it in a safer way, it's really good. And, with Africa, we've got digital currency already existing,
Yeah.
like M-Pesa in Kenya. I met a woman, her mom was a part of a savings group that saved like $1 to $2 million in local currency over time. And they're like, oh, this is great. Let's go to a bank and put it in the bank now, and we can get into investment products and all that. So they went to all these banks, and they quickly realized that no banks would take their money. And it was very confusing to them because they're like, we're not criminals. We're just like a women's savings group in the village. So I just wish I could have seen this happen as a fly on the wall. But with blockchain, there's an opportunity for these people to get into products. Now, I don't know how long the opportunity will last because blockchain and regulation will change, but I still think there's a window at this point in time.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. Be interesting to maybe not now, but to know more about your other project that you were doing, certainly in relation to some of the work we're doing in Kenya. So, as you look forward, and you may have talked about it then, I'm not sure, but what are your expectations in terms of innovation, the big new developments with, the intersection between climate technology, agriculture, when you look forward over the next kind of few years, what are your expectations and your hopes in terms of developments in the sector?
Yeah, so right now we have the high quality data that we need because of improvements and there's more soil data, there's more manually taken soil data in the world over a significant amount of time, which helps. AI is making data better. It's making soil data up to 98 to 100% better. And we have a small group of companies using AI and blockchain to make that data better. But I think the big problem right now is that it's just not financially accessible to people in the global south and these farmers who need it the most.
Yeah.
With the pricing I've heard from these companies, I just, no way. And then the other big challenge that we have is actually scaling to the farmers. So all this stuff is great and looks sexy in a LinkedIn post or Time magazine, but guess what? When it comes to implementing with the farmers in the field, that's a whole other ball game. And we need rapid scaling with bringing these farmers on board in a way that's culturally appropriate and financially sustainable for both sides.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's exactly the challenge we face with with the work we do. Needing more support for the South, but also needing the right way in terms of how you implement or engage with those communities and scale. So, and we're only scratching the surface. I think we've trained 15,000 farmers. We're working with about 1,000, or 20,000 we've trained even, but yeah, it's nothing compared to the 500 million that are out there that we could be working with. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
I didn't have any more questions. If there was anything I didn't ask, is there anything else you'd like to share? Otherwise, please also, do share where people can learn more, get in contact, everything else.
I think I've pretty much covered everything. I would just say, like, to, entrepreneurs at this point in time, just, keep going. I'm starting to see more funding coming in for sustainability. I'm starting to see more women founders get funding. And it's also important if you're a smaller startup to look at collaborations with other companies, because I'm seeing investors that they're kind of looking at sustainability as these cluster investments, portfolio investments, where you've got these medium-sized, more established companies that are doing great work, but they wouldn't invest in those small startups as a standalone because it's too much of a risk. But getting into like a cluster investment is going to be better for these earlier startups. So that's really important. And then, I would say just to contact me on LinkedIn if there are more questions.
Cool. Well, I'll leave your LinkedIn details in the description notes for the podcast. But yeah, thanks for joining again. It's good to catch up. Hopefully face to face one of these days rather than virtually. So.
Oh, for sure. That'll happen.
Cool. All the best, Erin. Take care.
Thanks.